So first off, congratulations on taking on the leadership role at your club level. As DG Dan was saying, your role is very important for the next 16, 17 months while you lead your club and make it a vibrant club. And if it's already vibrant, more vibrant, right? We're always striving to be a little bit better. So today I want to share some ideas with you about how to share your club story, how to create your club story, where to share it, and things you can do in your club to increase the profile of it, basically. And we just heard a great storyteller there. Carl certainly knows how to create an impactful story, something that his mother wrote, and I'll talk a little bit about it a little bit later in some of the specifics. So in the Lead Your Club guide, which you have received, there's a section on promoting Rotary. I just want to make a couple highlights of a few of the points that they make in there. One of them is very important to strike a club communications committee and have them develop a plan of how your club is going to work in the communications area. And once they put that plan together, I think it's important to share it with the club so your club knows that you want to get the message out of what your club is doing. Because we often hear about the good work that Rotary does, but we don't, we're shy about telling people about it. I think we have to end the shyness and get out there and toot our own horns. And then I think the other part of it is for every plan that you do, whether it's for a local project you're doing, an international project, or a fundraiser, there should be part of that plan should be the communication part. How are you going to tell that story? And who you tell that story to. So if you're telling your story to your club members, it's different than the story you tell to the media in Lethbridge, for example. Rotarians know a lot more about what we're doing, so we can use different language, but for the public, they don't necessarily know what some of the, RILA and YEX and all those sorts of things are. So we have to sort of focus our stories to whatever our target audience is. So I think we've all are pretty familiar with this, the information on this graphic. Those groups on the left and in the center, we come across them all the time that'll go, I've seen Rotary in Banff at the park, but what is Rotary all about? And I think that's where we can help our club members, our Rotarians, fellow Rotarians, have an answer to the question that we probably get most often. What is Rotary? And when you come across somebody that isn't familiar with Rotary, how do you answer this question? And maybe it's called your elevator pitch that you have sort of at the ready. Some of you may have it already, but you want to make that Rotary story authentic. DG Dan was talking about, you're going to your meeting in Banff. Why are you going? Well, because it's a meeting. Well, that's not what anybody wants to hear. We don't join Rotary to go to meetings. We join Rotary to make a difference. So you have to get that message through and make somebody understand what Rotary's done to you and what you've done for Rotary. So put 4 or 5 sentences together, and I think you should be the leader of your club as in the role that you're coming in as. So maybe make sure you have that elevator pitch and maybe work with your club members to do it. So I thought I'd share with you what I use as my elevator pitch. So Rotary is a group of community leaders, and we want to make a difference in Calgary. I'm from Calgary, so from Calgary and around the world. And our club has really realized that there's a lot of disadvantaged youth around Calgary and around the world that we can make a difference on. So our club has taken to focusing on making a difference in those children's lives. So we partner with lots of groups that are out there already doing great work. So one of the groups we partnered with is I Can for Kids, which last summer provided 60,000 meals for kids that over the summer, when they don't have their school to provide some sort of meal during the day, they have nothing. And this group will provide meals for them. So I think there's some meaning there. Now at that point, you can finish, if you're talking to somebody that's sort of inquiring because they might be interested, you can invite them to a Rotary meeting where you know the speaker and it ties into whatever you've just talked about. Maybe somebody from I Can for Kids is coming, or there's another group that's coming in. Or maybe you can invite them out to an activity. You're going, Rotary Club has helped, I Can't Forget, to put baskets together to distribute over the summer. So maybe your group is getting together for that, but a call to action at that end can make that elevator pitch meaningful and be able to really tell what Rotary is about. It's not just about a weekly meeting, it's about making a difference in the community. So when you go back to your clubs, maybe one of those things that you can do at an assembly is have a little workshop on making sure everybody has their elevator pitch at the ready, because it's great for fundraising, it's great for just spreading the Rotary story, it's great for finding new members. And I think if you can have some sort of brand consistency, that's the thing that Rotary is really trying to do in just some of the verbiage that we use, some of the language that we use. If you look on pages 47 and 48 of the Lead Your Club Guide, there's some general Rotary themes there that is a good starting point for when you're looking at that, developing your Rotary pitch. Whoops. So back in 2011, Rotary spent a lot of time refining the Rotary brand and focusing on simplifying its message and making sure that it was an impactful message. And what they came up with were these three ideas: join leaders, exchange ideas, and take action. And I think when you think of those three ideas and when you're creating a story to tell, if you can incorporate parts of one or two or three of these ideas, I think it really makes for an impactful story. So when you look at joining leaders, think about every Rotary Club. You guys are the prime example. It's full of leaders from your community. But we also train leaders, right? The opportunity, some people don't necessarily have an opportunity to be the president of their company, but to be president of a Rotary Club, you get that opportunity to develop those leadership skills. So you can build that into a story. Talking about connecting leaders around the world. When 2025, when Calgary's hosting the RI convention, that is going to be leaders from all over the world coming to our community to share their ideas, and we can share our ideas there. We're talking about the district conference. We're going to be in Olds, and we're going to be doing a community service project. Well, that's, again, our leaders are going to be helping that community. So there's all sorts of ways you can tie that into your story. And then, think of the diverse industries that are represented in your Rotary Club. It's not just the leaders from, whatever group, marketing groups or, bankers or something like that. We've got a very diverse group of leaders in our clubs. Exchanging ideas. DG Dan talked about this. When you look at a club and the diverse speakers you get, there's people in our club that are really focused on local projects. But then we have an international project that we're doing and then have a speaker come in. That broadens people's minds about what they're focused on, right? Rotary is not just about international, it's not just about local, it's about everything. And there's always people in our clubs that are focused on one thing or the other, but I think we do a great job of broadening people's perspectives. Youth exchanges, another great part of exchanging ideas. When you have youth coming from all over the world and coming to your home and you're sending somebody over there, the stories that they bring back are always fascinating. Great way to have another Rotary story that you can develop. And taking action, I think that one is probably the easiest for Rotary. Look at Polio Plus. We've made a commitment. Carl talked about that commitment. We are going to continue to work on that and finish the job on that one, no matter how long it takes. Community service projects you do, the international projects you do, you can identify the changes that you've made in your community and tell those stories. Now, why would you want to tell your story? We've all met those natural storytellers that they can always have a story to relate to whatever topic comes up at a Rotary meeting or a dinner or wherever it is, and you will always remember that story that they've told. Well, that's what we want to do for Rotary, is if you can have a few good Rotary stories from your club, that'll make it much more memorable in whoever's mind you're telling. On your tables, I've put an article there talking about how to bring the power of your personal story out. And this was written and in the Rotarian magazine in the fall. And Barbara Brotman talks about the different aspects of a story. And I think if we can, there's a few items in there that really are key to whether you're writing a tweet or writing a story for your club website or club newsletter, or you're going to be doing a news release. All those things are all stories, and we can all tell the story in a better way. And it all goes to build that Rotary brand. And I talked earlier about consistency. You look around the room here, you know, we've got these banners. They've got similar Rotary logo. We've got similar colors and similar ideas that have been promoted time and time again. So to Rotarians, that becomes, you start to see it. But for people, you know, I give the example of if somebody sees the Nike swoosh, you understand what that means. There's a feel behind that. It doesn't have to be anything more than just seeing that logo. That's what we want to do, and that's what Rotary wants to do with that logo. So if somebody sees that logo, they know there's 1.2 million Rotarians behind that are trying to make a difference. So if we can build that into our stories and how we make those stories look, it certainly makes it easier for the public to be able to connect the ideas. Now, Rotary is very decentralized. We can go out and do whatever we like. Each club is free to pursue whatever they want. So we want to make sure that we get that common message of, I think all Rotarians are really trying to do service above self is the bottom line of why most people join Rotary. And I think if we can get down to those commonalities versus the differences, then it certainly leads for a good Rotary story that helps build that Rotary brand. And when we've got a strong Rotary brand, it certainly helps fundraising, it helps membership, it helps all sorts of things that we do in our club. Now, when we're looking to tell your club story, I think when you're at the end here, we'll talk a little, or you'll give you some time to develop your a Rotary story. You want to focus on one thing. Don't try and put too much into one story. So whether it's an international project or a local project, or perhaps somebody in your club participated in a friendship exchange or social activities of your club, you can just tell one of those stories, and then I think tying it back to those three items we talked about: joining leaders, exchanging ideas, and taking action. However those items can be pulled into that story certainly makes it useful. In the article, Barbara talks about using action and using conflict or the friction in the story. So, if anybody's ever traveled internationally, the stories you always remember are the lost luggage, the missed flights. That's what creates the memorable story. There's certainly lots of other parts of it, but when Carl was talking and you hear him talking about, or his mother talking about having to leave their son in the hospital and then getting the call that he's passed away. Well, that's friction in that story. You're thinking, I always put myself in that story and go, how does a mother go on when she's got 3 more boys that she's got to look after? How do you do that? And you can hear in that letter, she's like, no matter what happens, I'm not leaving that hospital. It's not going to happen again to me. So you're put into that story because there's friction there. And I think, I said earlier, making it personal. You have to make these stories authentic, right? And the more how it influences you, whatever the story might be, you have to make it personal versus just the numbers. Nobody cares that we raised $20,000 for this. What did that $20,000 go and do is the important part. That's what we want to make sure we get out and tell that story. Youth exchanges is a great one, I think, for storytelling, because the number of people, I think we've got 2 Rotarians in our club who were youth exchangers, and they have endless amounts of stories, and they still go back and visit a family that they spent time with 20, 25 years ago, and their families are friends with their family, and it just goes on and on. So, there's a lot of interesting stories that can be told there. It doesn't have to be something you did this year. It could be something that is a 20-year story in the making that you can share. And one of the things that we'll talk about is sharing it. And that's, I think, one of the opportunities that we have today that 10 or 15 years ago we didn't have, is the ability to share it as easily as you can today. But using your story. So I think no matter who you've heard that's a great orator, right? Politicians, when they get up and speak, they've practiced their speech for hours before they deliver it. So, if you can develop one or two Rotary stories for your club and you're going to be talking about it in different ways, you'll get it. Not to say that DG Dan wasn't authentic in his talk earlier, but he's talked about those same principles probably for a year now, maybe a little longer. So he can talk for half an hour and make it pretty engaging. He has his bullet points that he wants to get to, but he just is feeling the room and going with it. And I don't think anybody thought he was unauthentic, right? Before, he was very authentic. If you can get to that point, that's the goal. So I think, you have to think about these things. So if you're driving back to your home this afternoon, start thinking about, how would you put a Rotary story together and how would it come off your lips, and turn the radio off and, practice it a little bit, because that makes sharing your story that much more impactful. And like I said earlier, sharing it, if you're focused on sharing, telling the story, maybe you're going to have a story a month for your club over your Rotary year. It's going to be a different story than what you would put on Facebook, because people on Facebook, again, will have a different view of what Rotary is all about, what they know going in. Now, sharing it. So today we have the ability to put a message out for free and anybody in the world can read it. That didn't happen 10, 15 years ago. We were beholden to what the newspaper might carry, and now newspapers are more or less irrelevant. And we are in control of the media. So whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, there's all kinds of avenues to share that story. And each one of those social media channels has a different target audience. And I think you have to figure out which one you want to focus on depending on what your target audience is. And we were talking to a bunch of the communication people 3 or 4 months ago, Rotarians, and we had a big discussion about what that target audience is. Facebook, is certainly not the youth's format these days, right? They're all Snapchatting and things like that. It's, more the people in this room are the ones that are more on Facebook now. So, maybe Facebook is where you want to focus. And I think the other part about social media is you really have to focus on one, maybe two of those areas. Trying to be great at all of them is really hard, unless you have a dynamo in your club that really can take on social media. It takes a lot of time, because if you put a message up on Twitter or on Facebook, that doesn't mean it's going to do anything, right? You have to have cultivated a lot of followers. You have to cultivate the reputation of being an interesting story, right? If people are active in Facebook or on in Twitter or something like that, and somebody posts something that always tells you something really interesting, you are going to spend time reading theirs, even if they have the dud every once in a while, but they've built up the reputation. So I think that's where it takes a lot of work. So you have to tell it consistently, you have to tell it frequently, and you have to have somebody dedicated in your club to be doing that. And the holy grail of social media is having a message go viral. And if I make you think of one idea that's gone viral for a charity, does anybody have any ideas of which one I might be talking about? Ice Bucket Challenge. Yeah, okay, this is the 4th or 5th time I've said that, and always that is the one, right? So it was back in the summer of 2014. They raised $115 million for ALS. And it didn't start out by wanting to be viral. It was just a call to action. very unique. It was lent itself to the social media that was just really starting to come on at that time. You know, I don't think you are ever going to go out thinking that you're going to, I don't know how many times it was retweeted or how many challenges were done, but it was a lot. You know, and raise $114 million and the profile, and have it still being talked about 5 years later in social media land, right? Where things that happened yesterday at noon are old news. But if you can tell a good story and have a call to action and make it compelling and do those sorts of things, maybe you can get something that's viral in your, you know, small neck of the woods. Maybe it's not going to be global, but maybe just in that small neck of the woods. It certainly is an option or a potential out there. So at this time, I think what I'd like to do is, maybe we won't spend quite 10 minutes on this part, but 6 or 7. If you're sitting with somebody else from your club, maybe you could just talk about developing a quick sort of Rotary story, and don't do something that you've always talk about. Every club, I'm sure, has the 1 or 2 projects that you always talk about, and they might even be from 4 or 5 years ago. I know it's happened in our club where if you ask somebody in our club what's going on, they'll say something that, you know, we haven't done anything with for 5 years. Try and make it new. Spend a little bit of time of how would you tell that story to somebody that doesn't know anything about it, so not your club. And then after that, after you spent 5 or 6 minutes, maybe we'll spend another 2 or 3 minutes about how you might share it, whether it's at an event or a media or something like that. And then we'll get a few of them, people that are proud of their story to share it with the group. So, and if you're by yourself and you don't have anybody else with your club, you could think about your Rotary story, your personal Rotary story, or certainly work on a full Rotary story. And I'm happy to, if you've got a question or anything, maybe now we can answer any questions, and certainly I'm happy to come around while we're doing that. Any questions before we go to the table topic there? Perfect. I'll interrupt you in about 5 or 6 minutes to move you on to the next part. With the presentation, there is a resource page there, and most of these items can be found on the RI website. Great for your communications committee, and the social media guide that Rotary's put together is really phenomenal. They've done a really good job of breaking down the target audiences of each of the different channels that you can use. So, you know, whether you're a little experienced, a lot experienced, or no experience, I think it's a very interesting read if you have some interest there. So these items, if you just search the RI website, you can pick those up as well. So we've got a few minutes. If there's anybody out there that feels that they are willing to share their Rotary story or some of their thoughts, I like this. Let's hear it, Carrie. There's no wrong answers here.
Apparently, I'm going to tell a story of our agricultural scholarship, so feel free to say that I don't know. Team effort, yeah. Our club just very recently held a fundraising dinner to support an agricultural scholarship in conjunction with our local exhibition. It was a dinner for a $10,000 scholarship for someone to pursue the later years of their undergraduate or even their master's level. Am I right?
It's open to at least 3 years of university.
Okay, so their 4th year or later. The exhibition was a great partner. They helped with a lot of things. Our club had a committee who screened the applicants, which were slow in coming in, but at the end we had quite a few. Were they all women? Mostly all
9
women?
out of 12.
9 out of 12 were women. The successful recipient of the scholarship was Lauren. Yes. I don't know her last name. Local girl. I think all of the applicants had to be from southern Alberta. I don't know what she's pursuing with that money. Can you refresh my memory about that? Or she has.
Well, she's going to continue her studies. She might go on to do an MBA or a master's degree. She can go into grad studies, but she wants to go back to the farm and start a business and promote Rotary and promote agriculture. And through social media, correcting the misconceptions on social media. That's her #1 goal.
Is she a Rotarian?
Yeah, and if you've got somebody like this that can tell a great story and partners like the exhibition, I'm assuming this is Lethbridge? Yeah. So, you know, in Calgary, the Calgary Stampede, those guys can get any kind of media they want because they have that profile already. So if you can piggyback off them, you're doing great, right? So that's where you're using your partnership. And if you can get that individual to tell their story, right, you know, that's fantastic. And, you know, I think that's something that the media can pick up on, right? You know, there's some interesting topics there.
Just on that, so a question then to Carrie, to the group. So have the media interviewed, is it Laura? Has there been a story in the paper?
If
Yeah,
you
great.
Google
Great.
the Ag Scholarship, I just came up with Farm Express or something that had a thing about the thing. We also have a YouTube video, do we not?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we have a YouTube video from the whole thing as well. And it's going out to 35,000 rural establishments on the advisory in southern Alberta.
Wow.
You guys should be up here teaching this. So that's fantastic. I think there was another hand over here. Somebody else wanted to share? Oh, yeah, that was great.
Carrie, thanks for sharing that. I'm just wondering, like, what other vehicles have we got to make sure that all other Rotarians know about this? Agriculture is vital to, you know, all the communities in all of North America. There's application for this. So we shouldn't hog all the glory and the information here. How do we share this?
Storytellers, and I think this is where if you, I don't know you talked about social media a little bit, but if we all follow each other on our social media, that's one of those other key components of it, so that if you put up a YouTube video and we're following your channel, then we know what's going on. And then we can repost it and spread it to our networks and sort of have the real compounding effect of social media kick in, because we have a lot of those stories, right? You know, I'm sure each club has a story like that. So it's a matter of getting that out in the district and Rotary International wise. So, you know, it's just get it out there and share that story, right? Anybody else? One more story that anybody wants to share? Perfect. Yep, perfect.
Well, just a short time ago, I met up with a young lady that went on the RILA program. And I was chatting with her and her mother. And her mother was telling me how fantastic the RILA program was for her daughter and how much she has matured. And the young lady is now going off to, actually down here to the U of L this coming year. And she's going to be one of the future leaders within our communities. And we don't tell that story enough. And she also indicated to me that very few people in the school that she attends even knows about the RILA program. She came and gave the presentation to us. Now, whether she gave any presentation at the school, I'm unaware of it. But that's something that should be brought forth to the schools. And the mother indicated that their son, who's now in grade 10, is now also wanting to go on that RILA program just because of how this sister had matured just by simply going to that leadership conference.
Which is a fantastic story. Our club went out to RILA, I can't remember if it was this past year or the year before that, but I'd never been to RILA, right? It's one of those things that just wasn't in my world of interest. But you go out there and we had dinner with them and it's like, holy cow, this really is impactful. So I think, RILA might be a secret for Rotarians. I've been in Rotary 25 years. I know what RILA is, but I didn't know what RILA was, right? So we could the stories are endless like that, right? Where to get exposure, and certainly hoping that she does it at the school level, because, the fellow that runs the Global Grant Scholarships is in our club. So we always get those global scholarship winners to come and speak at our club. And you'll hear about all the stuff that these kids have done in university and in high school. And I'm like, I didn't know about any of these programs, right? So, even in the high schools that you might not know about all this stuff. So, maybe it's telling these stories to guidance counselors and all those sorts of people as well. Yeah.
I think it was 2 president meetings ago that we talked about this, about Ryla and Ripon. And so Ryla and Ripon are also kind of coming together. They're more collaborating now, and they're looking into getting more in contact with these schools and getting these programs more out there. So that issue is sort of being addressed.
We don't want to keep secrets here, right? That's the big thing. So, keep up the good work. We'll wrap it up there, and I think Christine's going to tell us a little bit about what's going on at the RI level and what her plans are for the forthcoming term. So, thanks very much. And if you have any questions on communications, we're always happy to help out in any way we can.